lesson, you'll practice flying an ILS approach. Before flying this lesson, make sure you understand how to read the instruments in the 737 cockpit. You can find lots of information about the 737 in the Aircraft Handbook section of Help. I'll handle communications and I'll set the navigation radios so you can concentrate on flying. We're cruising at 4,000 feet on a heading of about 340 degrees, roughly northwest.
Blue Sky 737, turn left heading 330, slow to 200 knots and descend to 2,100. Expect ILS runway 36 at executive.
That's our clearance from the controller.
Left to 330, slow to 200 and down to 2,100. Blue Sky 737.
We've been told to slow down and descend, so reduce power to idle and keep the nose up while we slow down. Now drop the nose a couple of degrees to start the descent.
Your radios are set for the next segment.
We're getting close to our assigned altitude. Set flaps to 5 degrees. Press the F7 key 3 times. Slow to 180 knots. Then set the power to about 55% N1 to hold 180 knots and 2,100 feet. We'll hold this altitude until the glide slope centers. The glide slope indicator is the yellow diamond that moves up and down along the right side of the HSI. Take the controls. I'll disengage the autopilot. When the localizer needle starts to move toward the center, begin a right turn to intercept.
Localizer active.
Make small corrections on the localizer and glide slope. They're sensitive. Make small, shallow turns to keep the yellow course bar in the center of the HSI. The glide slope indicator is moving down. Select gear down, set flaps to 15, and slow to 160 knots. Set flaps to 30 and slow to 140 knots. When the glide slope indicator centers, set flaps to 40 and start descending.
Executive Tower, Blue Sky 737 at Brute.
Blue Sky 737, wind 090 at 5, runway 36, clear to land.
As the airplane stabilizes during the descent, you'll probably need to set power at about 50% N1. As we fly down the glide slope, maintain about 140 knots. At this speed, you should descend at about 800 feet per minute. When the glide slope indicator is in the center, you're on the proper descent path. If the glide slope indicator moves towards the top of the HSI, you're too low. If the glide slope indicator moves toward the bottom of the HSI, you're too high. If you're below the glide slope, increase N1 by 5 to 10% to decrease your descent rate. If you're above the glide slope, decrease N1 by 5 to 10% to increase your descent rate. When you're established on a stable descent on the glide slope, the airplane's nose will be slightly above the horizon line.
Check glide slope. Adjust your descent rate. Runway in sight.
As you approach the runway, you can get a better view by pressing the W key. Press W again to return to normal cockpit view.
Check glide slope. Adjust your descent rate. Check airspeed. If you're too fast, raise the nose a little. If you're too slow, lower the nose a little. 50 feet.
Reduce power to idle. As you cross over the runway threshold, smoothly reduce power to idle. Hold the nose slightly above the horizon line. Don't let it drop, but don't try to raise it either. After you touch down, extend the speed brakes and hold down the F2 key to engage reverse thrust. That was nearly a perfect flight.
Blue Sky 737, cleared to the terminal.
Hope you enjoyed the flight, and be careful on your drive home from the airport.